Picture this. A father watches as guards drag his eldest son into the throne room. The boy is screaming, begging, crying for mercy. The father doesn't flinch. He simply nods, and within seconds, his own child is dead on the palace floor. But here's the insane part. This wasn't his first family murder, or his second, or even his 10th. By the time he was done, he'd personally ordered the execution of 19 family members. 19. His own blood. Brothers, sons, nephews, cousins. It didn't matter. If they shared his bloodline and posed even the slightest threat to his power, they were dead. This is Sultan Murad IV. And whilst in his 20s, he became one of the most feared rulers in Ottoman history. He inherited an empire on the brink of collapse and transformed it into an unstoppable military machine. But the price? The systematic murder of anyone who shared his blood. And boy, did he enjoy the killing. You see, Murad didn't just execute family members, he made it into an art form. Some were strangled with silk bowstrings. Others were drowned in palace fountains. A few were simply walled up alive and left to die in darkness. The really unlucky ones? They got to experience Murad's personal favorite, being forced to watch their own children die first, then being executed themselves. But how does a young prince, raised in luxury and educated by the finest scholars, end up becoming a monster who kills his own family without hesitation? How does someone go from playing with his brothers in palace gardens to ordering their strangulation? The truth behind this story is even crazier than you might think. Because Murad wasn't born evil. He was created by a system so twisted, so paranoid, that family murder wasn't just accepted, it was expected. Little did anyone know that this young sultan would take that expectation and turn it into something so extreme that even hardened Ottoman officials were horrified. Welcome to the insane true story of Sultan Murad IV. Murad was born in 1612 into a world where your own brother could be your assassin. The Ottoman Empire had a charming little law called fratricide. Basically, when a new sultan took power, he was legally required to kill all his brothers to prevent civil war. Think about that for a second. You're a kid growing up in a palace, and you know that either you'll kill your siblings or they'll kill you. There's no third option. Murad's own father, Ahmed I, had broken this tradition and kept his brothers alive, which everyone thought was merciful. But here's what nobody realized. This mercy had created something worse. Now, instead of quick deaths, the royal family lived in constant paranoia, plotting against each other, never knowing who would strike first. Young Murad watched all of this unfold. At age 5, he saw his uncle overthrown. At 7, he watched another uncle take power. By age 9, he'd witnessed 3 different sultans rise and fall, each accompanied by executions, poisonings, and mysterious deaths. Murad would later reflect on this and say that these early years taught him the most important lesson of his life. In the Ottoman palace, love was weakness, and mercy was death. The truth is, every meal could be poisoned, every servant could be an assassin, and every smile from a relative could be hiding a dagger. At age 11, something happened that would shape Murad forever. His older brother Osman II was brutally murdered by the Janissaries, the elite guards supposed to protect the Sultan. They didn't just kill him, they tortured him first, then strangled him slowly while he begged for his life. Murad was forced to watch from a hidden alcove as his brother died. You see, the killers wanted all the princes to see what happened when a sultan showed weakness. It was an early lesson for Murad that power wasn't given, it was taken, held, and defended with absolute brutality. When Murad became sultan at age 11 in 1623, everyone thought he'd be dead within a year. The empire was collapsing. The Janissaries were out of control, executing anyone they didn't like. Provincial governors had declared independence. The Safavids had conquered Baghdad. The treasury was empty. But Murad saw an opportunity here that nobody else recognized. While his advisors panicked, this 11-year-old boy was already planning something extraordinary. He understood that chaos created opportunity and weakness invited strength. For the first 4 years, Murad played the perfect puppet ruler. He smiled, he nodded, he agreed with everything his mother and advisors suggested. But behind that innocent facade, he was studying everyone, learning their weaknesses, their desires, their fears. Using these new connections, he built a secret network of loyalists, people who owed him personal favors, people who believed in his vision of absolute power. Every night, while the palace slept, young Murad would meet with these allies, planning, preparing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Janissaries thought they controlled him. The Grand Vizier thought he was running the empire. His own mother thought she was the real power behind the throne. But Murad was playing a game none of them even knew existed. In many ways, it was such an incredibly simple move, but it was the meticulous planning that made it possible. He started by eliminating threats indirectly. A poisoned meal here, a convenient accident there, never anything that could be traced back to him. By age 15, 3 of his biggest rivals were dead, and nobody suspected the quiet teenage sultan. Then in 1632, when Murad turned 20, he made his move. But here's the crucial part. He didn't just seize power. He orchestrated a complete transformation of the empire in a single night. What the palace didn't realize was that Murad had spent years placing his men in every key position. At exactly midnight, on February 8th, 1632, the plan activated. Within 6 hours, every potential threat to Murad's power was either dead or in chains. The head of the Janissaries, found floating in the Bosphorus, the Grand Vizier, strangled in his sleep. His own brothers, who had been plotting against him, they never saw sunrise. But the real genius wasn't the executions, it was what happened next. Murad appeared before the people, not as a tyrant, but as a savior. He announced that he'd uncovered a massive conspiracy to destroy the empire, and he'd saved them all from traitors. The evidence? Conveniently discovered letters proving everyone he'd killed was planning rebellion. What's really interesting, though, is that some of these letters were probably real. When you live in that much paranoia, everyone really is plotting against everyone. Murad now had absolute power, and this is very different to what normal people can even comprehend. He could kill anyone, take anything, do whatever he wanted, and that's exactly what he did. The killing of family members became almost routine. His brother Bayezid was strangled on suspicion of smiling too much at a council meeting. Murad interpreted it as mockery. His nephew Suleiman, only 16 years old, was executed because a fortune teller said he'd one day be sultan. Another brother, Qasim, was killed simply because Murad had a dream about him holding the throne. The palace lived in absolute terror. Servants would literally shake when serving him meals. His own mother stopped visiting him, terrified she'd say something wrong and end up dead. But the executions didn't stop there. The problem was, Murad had developed what modern psychologists would probably call severe paranoid personality disorder. Every shadow was an assassin. Every whisper was a conspiracy. Every gathering of more than 2 people was a potential rebellion. He banned coffee, tobacco, and alcohol, not for religious reasons, but because people gathered in coffee houses to talk, and talking meant potential plotting. The punishment for drinking coffee? Death. For smoking? Death. For gathering in groups? You guessed it, death. However, back in the provinces, people were starting to ask questions. How many family members could one sultan kill before even the Ottoman system said enough? Murad's own advisors began to worry that he was eliminating so many potential heirs that there'd be nobody left to succeed him. Little did Murad know that his obsession with eliminating threats was actually creating the very instability he feared. Provincial governors started to wonder, if the Sultan could kill his own blood so easily, what chance did they have? Rebellions began sprouting across the empire, but instead of addressing the root cause, Murad doubled down. More executions, more paranoia, more blood. Then in 1640, something happened that even Murad couldn't control. Years of excessive drinking. Yes, the man who banned alcohol was secretly an alcoholic, had destroyed his body. He developed cirrhosis of the liver at age 27. For Murad, as the pain intensified and his body began to fail, his paranoia reached new heights. He became convinced that his illness was the result of poisoning, that everyone around him was trying to kill him. In his final months, he ordered the execution of anyone who even looked at him wrong. Servants were killed for breathing too loudly. Guards were executed for blinking at the wrong moment. The final irony came in his last days. Murad, the Sultan who'd killed 19 family members to secure his throne, realized he'd left almost no heirs to succeed him. He'd been so thorough in eliminating potential threats that only his mentally disabled brother Ibrahim remained alive, kept breathing only because everyone thought he was too insane to ever rule. As Murad lay dying, he allegedly tried to order Ibrahim's execution too, but his advisors, finally finding their courage, refused. On the 8th of February 1640, exactly 8 years after his night of blood, Sultan Murad IV died at age 28, choking on his own blood, surrounded by servants too terrified to help him. As for Ibrahim, he became Sultan and proved to be even more insane than Murad, ultimately being overthrown and executed himself. The Ottoman Empire entered a period of chaos that took decades to recover from. Ultimately, though, the people who suffered most were the Ottoman citizens who lived through this reign of terror. What is clear is this was an example of how absolute power, combined with a system that encourages family murder, can create monsters beyond imagination. The Ottoman fratricide law, which was meant to ensure stability, had instead created a ruler so paranoid, so violent, that he nearly destroyed the very empire he was trying to protect. Reports suggest that towards the end, Murad had gone from a strategic killer to someone who genuinely enjoyed watching people die. He would sometimes order executions just to relieve boredom, making up crimes that never happened. Modern historians estimate he was responsible for over 20,000 deaths during his 17-year reign. That's more than 3 people executed every single day of his rule. But here's the truly disturbing part. Within the Ottoman system, Murad wasn't even considered the worst sultan. He was just another ruler playing by the empire's twisted rules, albeit taking them to their absolute extreme. It makes you realize that sometimes the real monster isn't the individual, it's the system that creates them. Now, whilst the story of Sultan Murad IV is pretty horrifying, I still wouldn't call him the most psychopathic ruler in history. For that, you're going to want to check out the absolutely insane story of Emperor Caligula, a man who made his horse a consul, built a floating bridge across the ocean just to ride across it, and allegedly tried to declare war on the sea itself. The level of madness we're talking about makes Murad look almost reasonable by comparison. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.